Hey everybody, I'm Tim and today we're diving into the dark blends. You're watching Cigars Daily. Hey, get more out of this and all our videos when you join the community on Cigars Daily Plus and when you watch this on Rumble. Like so many cigar aficionados, the lifelong dream I had was to have a cigar brand, something that I could create with my creativity. What I discovered is that having a cigar brand is a giant pain in the ass. And blending brand new cigars is sort of like the dating world, about which I hear almost unanimously bad things. Now, my wife and I are coming up on our 14th wedding anniversary. We survived the 7-year itch and a bunch of stuff in between. But what I hear about the dating world are some of the most horrific stories that I've heard in just about any segment of life these days. It sounds truly awful. Trying to meet people and you go out and she's got a weird, fetish or a lack of a fetish or whatever it is that drives people absolutely nuts and makes it so that nobody can really mate or meet up these days. It's a difficult thing. If you're in the dating world, you likely know what this is like. And the blending world seems to be about the same. And that's not only based on my experience with blending, but what I hear from so many guys out there in the cigar world who go through blend after blend after blend looking for just the right one. The only difference between blending a cigar and the dating world is that cigar blenders eventually find exactly what they're looking for, and in the dating world, nobody really does. We all sort of settle to one degree or another, don't we? And right now, I am working on a project that I've been working on for a hell of a long time, and that is the American Viking Unkillable. And the basic idea behind Unkillable is twofold. For one, I love the idea of a cigar called Unkillable because it truly represents the nature of what the cigar industry is all about. In order to do what people in this industry do, you have to be basically unkillable. And whether it's escaping communism in Cuba or running away from the Sandinistas in the 1970s and 80s in Nicaragua, or surviving relentless taxes and regulations and red tape that cigar makers have gone through, or even the FDA's deeming rule, which sought to completely crush the cigar industry over the last 10 years, there is always something threatening to destroy the cigar world. It's like that scene in Men in Black when, Tommy Lee Jones is telling Will Smith, he's like, there's always some alien force that's looking to crush humanity. And that's what it is for the cigar world. You just don't always hear about it. And I respect the people in the cigar world for the way that they are. They absolutely pursue with laser focus the goal of crafting the best premium blends and creating art in the midst of a rather tumultuous world filled with a lot of turmoil. And so the people are unkillable. And I love that about them. It's something that I value a lot in this industry. The other side of this was the creation of a truly bold, dark, strong blend in the American Viking catalog. You see, American Viking is my dream come true. The Filthy Viking, my desert island cigar, always has been and probably always will be. A Habano wrapper with Honduran binders and fillers. A cigar that comes out with this buttery note to it, a really nice body and presence. In the midst of that, a barber pole called the Liga Zebra that holds this dope looking zebra on it with something that's always kind of been a dream of mine in cigars. I don't know why. And then there's the box pressed Rebellion with its little pawn on it that has a crown. And there's a fun story behind that. A dark box-pressed Habano cigar that's really quite medium. And Dama Valada that represents strength in the midst of complexity. And even still, Obrigado, the first banded blend I ever got to do in the cigar world was such a privilege with a little bit darker than regular Habano wrapper on it. And of course, the cigar that I couldn't live without creating, and that's Rico Barato, the cigar that for me celebrates my early time in cigars when I was in college, and then first out of college when I had really no real money to speak of. I was just poor, and so I could only afford the cheapest cigars out there. I knew that I wanted to have a cigar in the American Viking catalog that was really affordable and good. Those are two qualities that to me go really well together. But for me, there's one thing that as my palate grows, I'm sort of missing from my own catalog, and it's just unacceptable. And that is a truly dark, rich, bold, strong cigar. Something with a little pepper and spice and a little bit of a kick of that nicotine. And so I've been working on that for the last couple of years, and that's what I'm seeking for the Unkillable. Something strong. And after talking with the factory and going back and forth on samples again and again and again, I'm landing close to where I'm like, yes, this is the one for me. And so I wanted to take you guys through a little bit of this process, tell you a little bit about my winning sample thus far, and really give you some of the bold, strong cigars that have landed me where I am today. Now, when it comes to the sample right here, there are a few things that stand out as the absolute musts. These are the things that we gotta have in order to get there. This would be like when you go out on a date. You've got your list of things. This person must have A, B, and C to really measure up for me. Then you get to the date and they order 14 different plates of oysters and continue to eat them all in front of you and then expect you to pay for them. And you're like, dear God, this person had none of those things. What a disaster. But for me, when it comes to a really nice, bold, balanced cigar, the first thing is construction. And already my samples have consistently had a nice sharp razor burn, held a very long, consistent ash, and a perfect draw. Now, the cigars are coming out of the factory that all other American Viking cigars come out of, and so I know the quality and consistency for burn and draw and ash that I get from this factory. They roll cigars reliably well. At the same time, then we move on from construction into that flavor experience. Consistency is the first key. How quickly does that blend come fully to life after light up? Now, my factory does a good job. Within the first half an inch, I'm getting that full profile that I'm looking for. And with this cigar right here, that profile delivers on a little bit of a floral note through the retrohale, a really nice cocoa and espresso note across the tongue, present sweetness with a little bit of cinnamon on the tip of the tongue, and a really nice, voluminous, thick, chewy smoke, along with a little bit of spice in the back of the throat, probably a 4 out of 10 on spice, and some black pepper on the retrohale, but not so much that it would overwhelm. I want a cigar that's not powerfully spicy and peppery, but definitely has that kind of presence. And I'll say this has been a bit of a surprise to me because in my most recent run of samples, I got 2 different blends. One of them was a Mexican San Andreas Oscuro wrapper, and those have been traditionally some of my favorite cigars. Dark Maduro Mexican San Andreas blends from a lot of cigar makers out there. But this one, the current leader of my pack that's crushing my palate right now, is a Nicaraguan Habano Oscuro wrapper from the Jalapa Valley. And now Jalapa Valley is known for having some leaf that has this inherent sweetness to it, which is where I'm getting that sweetness on the tip of the tongue. And for me, this is given the complexity, the body, the strength, the construction, and all the different pieces of the puzzle that I've spent the last couple years looking for, which is why I'm comfortable saying we're getting close. After that, it's only, another 3 to 6 months plus probably a couple of months for who knows what before I actually have cigars in my hand. But all that being said, this process for me of coming up with a new cigar has been a lot about the personal journey. When I got into cigars, and I've been doing this for about 22 years, I loved mild, creamy, smooth Connecticut cigars for ever. But then over the last few years, my palate has really shifted into liking this strong stuff that grips the palate and leaves me clamoring for more. And so I wanted to take you through a few of the cigars that have been influential for me in crafting a desire to come up with something complex, strong, that stands out from the rest of the herd. And so I'll ask you to put right here, when it comes to the full strength, cigar that you do after steak and potatoes dinner, drop a comment down below and let me know what that would be. Is that an Oscuro wrapper? Is it Dark Sumatra? Is it Mexican San Andreas or Broadleaf? Who makes that cigar? Where does it come from? Tell me more about it down there below. And with no further ado, let's jump right in. You know, as I pulled the cigars for this video, it sort of dawned on me how many of these projects have spurned on new projects of their own that have become daily editions, where I get to work with amazing cigar makers to craft brand new projects. Because this first one is the Diesel Vintage Maduro. It uses a Mexican San Andreas Oscuro wrapper, and one of the things about this cigar that catches my palate so acutely is this like plum style sweetness this cigar has. It's one of the most unique styles of sweetness I've found in a cigar, and there's only a few of them out there. Some cigars have like a raisiny sweetness. With some of them, it's like a vanilla type sweetness. Other cigars even have a sweetness that's more citrusy. This is the only one that's like specifically plum sweetness, and especially for a cigar that's more of an economy sort of daily smoke type cigar, this one produces like quite a bit of complexity. But it was certainly the cigar that captured my palate enough to make me call Justin Andrews and say, I have to collaborate with you. And the reason that we birthed the Desert Walker, which is currently like at the top of the pile of all the daily editions out there that's getting all the love and accolades. But certainly Diesel's Vintage Maduro is a cigar that bats way above its value on the shelf. Now, if you know anything about me, or hell, know anything about cigars at all, you would expect to see a cigar from Steve Saka on this list. Steve Saka does dark, bold, rich blends better and probably more often than just about anybody. Hell, like 2/3 or 3/4 of his catalog is broadleaf and Mexican San Andreas, but I'm also not going to put like 4 or 5 Steve Saka blends on this list. And I'd be curious to know if you can guess up front which cigar I'm holding in my hand. This one right here is a cigar that I go to when I'm having a bad day. My philosophy's always been that if I'm having a bad day, I'm going to light up some of the nicest blends out there. If you see me smoking like a top tier blend, I might just be having a bad day. There's not a lot of those in the cigar industry, but they do come along. And so I'll often go to the Dunbarton Sin Compromiso. And if it's a particularly bad day, I'll have the Paladin de Saka. This is another cigar that sort of has a new project in the works. See, it uses a Mexican San Andreas wrapper along with Steve Saka's ultra picky, like very critical blending nature to craft these really complex cigars. And he's even given me samples of a new one called Leche Bura, which will be coming out late this year. And that's going to be a killer project. Steve Saka gave me 2 samples of Leche Bura. Okay. I am so afraid to even smoke them. He gave them to me last year in October. I still have them sitting in my office, and I have to light them up before they start to age, and then like the blend changes or gets resolved and refined or something like that. I'm gonna have to smoke one sooner or later, but I do know that for like a bold, strong experience with a little bit of pepper and spice, but also that extra smooth, refined like flavor profile without having to age a cigar for several years, I can always look to Sin Compromiso or one of Steve Saka's other broadleaf blends. Now, not all the cigars on this list have already spurned on a brand new project with me and that cigar maker. Hell, this one hasn't yet. But I have been so intrigued by the blends of Karen Berger. She's like one of very few female cigar makers in the industry and has a hell of a knack for it. And all of her catalog has these really very different and interesting complex blends. Hell, today when I got to the HQ, I lit up a Karen Berger Connecticut. But this cigar right here is a like end of the day personal favorite, and that is the Karen Berger K-Fire. This cigar, again, is a Mexican San Andreas. And I swear, I'm not just going after San Andreas blends on this list, but there do seem to be a lot of them. This cigar right here, for me, presents an interesting balance and like ultra vivid, sharp, complex flavor profile. There are a lot of cigars out there that are complex. There's a lot going on in the flavor, and there's a lot to taste and find, and it's exciting. But this cigar seems to have these crystal clear flavor notes within it that just every time I sit down and try to pick those things out, I find them very easily. For me, not only is this a good cigar to pair with like a good whiskey, a good scotch, or even a good spiced rum, but if I'm trying to grow my palate and learn to taste new flavor notes, this would be a dark cigar that I would be looking to do exactly that. Now, of course, if I'm looking for pepper and spice and everything nice, there's one dude in the cigar world that I know gets this just about better than anyone, and that is Eric Espinosa. And his cigar, the Murcielago, is one that I always find is palate quenching when I need something with a lot of like gripping the back of the throat spice and plenty of pepper on the retrohale. This is another Mexican San Andreas. So again, it's a lot of San Andreas on this list. But this cigar right here has already given way to a new project that's it's the next thing I'm anticipating seeing come around. I went to Eric Espinosa last year and I said, Eric, I'm a fan of the Murcielago, but I wonder what this blend would taste like with a dark Sumatra wrapper. Now, we've been working on this for a while, and I've got an amazing blend that I've absolutely been satiated by, that I just keep coming back to, that we are going to call the Murcielago Echo Hail. Echo Hail because it's sort of like the retro hail is where you find a lot of the complexity in the cigar, and bats listen to the echo. The idea is to produce a new take on the flavor of Murcielago with even more volume of flavor, a little bit more complexity, and a different kind of pepper and spice from that dark Sumatra wrapper. But one thing's for sure, the original Murcielago will always be the original and always be the one that captured my palate. Now, of course, there are a lot of bold, strong, powerful, and very complex cigars out there, and a lot that I personally look to, especially when I'm like chewing over a project like Unkillable. And now here I am, just barely through the second third, getting into the final third, and this cigar continues to bring the complexity that I was looking for. It was like a few months ago, we had samples of a cigar that just was exactly what I was looking for. But then in the second half of the cigar, the flavor profile consistently fell apart. From cigar to cigar out of all the samples, the second third just wasn't very good. And I found myself scratching my head being like, how does that happen? How is the first half amazing and the second half is just awful? It's sort of like those dates you go on, the Tinder dates, where the first half is like, oh, this person's attractive. And the second half is like, oh, they're a psychopath. Now I see why they're single. But at the end of the day, the cigar world lets me express this creativity and find just the perfect thing. And that's why I've spent so long working on this project. And of course, the cigars I've mentioned in this video aren't the only ones. There are a lot more out there. And that's why I'm also curious to hear from you. Drop a comment with the most balanced, most complex, full-bodied blend, even if it's got some nice pepper and spice in there to titillate the palate. And of course, check this video out on the community on Cigars Daily Plus and on Rumble. And thanks again for joining me. This is Tim, signing off for Cigars Daily, and I will see you in the comments.